Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Garris, and welcome to the Transporter Room. Today, we have a very, very special guest joining us, Ellie Littlechild. Ellie is one of the hosts of the popular YouTube channels TrekCulture and WhoCulture. Thank you for making the time to come on the show today, Ellie. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk about Trek and Who.
Oh, I know. And your Who knowledge is far superior to my Who knowledge. And so I'll tell you how I got into it. Um, but something that I have been learning as I've been doing these interviews is, I've wanted to start to find out what prompted you or led you to get into this whole world of podcasting and like with all the channels you do.
I actually kind of fell into it. Originally, I was training to be an actor. I went to university. My degree is in drama and acting. And then I graduated and I just went back to the same job in the same pub that I'd worked at since I was 16, and was like, well, to be an actor, I need an agent. So I'm just going to try and find an agent and work at the pub. And then I saw an advert it was specifically for Who Culture. They were looking for a host for Who Culture. And I was like, this is perfect. This is I've loved Doctor Who my whole life. Most people kind of grew out of it. I still very much was a big Doctor Who fan. And it wasn't quite acting, but it was still kind of along the same path. It was on camera work. It was, presenting. So I just applied for that. They asked me to do like an audition tape. They sent me like an article and said present the first 2 pages. And then they gave me the job for Who Culture, which was originally just as a freelancer. They'd give me a few videos like every few weeks. And I think in those first 6 months, I did maybe 4 videos. I didn't do very many. Then, obviously, in amongst all of this, a pandemic hit. So, everything went up in the air.
Oh, so you said this right as the pandemic was hitting then.
So I think it was more towards the end. I think it was 2021, I think, when I applied. I think it was mid 2021. It was all I've done so much in the last few years that it's kind of all blurred into one. But yeah, I think it was kind of mid 2021 that I got the job. Then towards the end of the year, I just got fed up in the pub. I was like, this is not what I want to do. So I contacted What Culture as a company and said, is it possible for me to get more work so that I can step away from the pub and focus on this full time? So I was technically still a freelancer, but they put me on the Trek channel as well. They put me on the main channel more, and they basically said, "We'll give you more work, and you can." Even though I was still a freelancer to them, it was my full time job, and I did that for a year. And then I said to them, "I need a proper full time job, not a freelance job. What can you do about that?" And then they hired me full time. So now this is my full time job. But originally it was just Who Culture, and I've just kind of made my way across all the other channels as well.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know that. And as I was doing some research on everything, I did see you did the the Who culture and then just the parent what culture stuff as well. And I started watching some of the videos. I wasn't 100% sure because trying to figure it all out because I think it was a Who culture originals, Who culture or something else. And I was like, okay, how many subgenres of what culture is
What culture
there?
has a lot of, I mean, some of them even I don't work on, but I work across Who Culture is my predominant focus. Trek Culture is my secondary focus, but them two are my kind of main ones. But then I also do work on the main channel, What Culture, and I also do some videos for What Culture Horror as well. Although I'm not actually a big horror fan, but I go where the work is.
Hey, that's what all of us do that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what's cool about that. And I watched this morning. I was watching one of your most recent Who Culture videos about the Daleks. Um, that was actually interesting. I didn't again not having Doctor Who in the United States is not that easily. It's a lot easier now because we get BBC America and all that, but we it was not always something that you could see here, and it was interesting to learn how there was actually the myth that the Daleks were contractually obligated to be in every series.
Yes, that. I mean, as I said in the video, I genuinely didn't know that wasn't true. I thought that. I mean, it's a myth so well known that I thought it was true. Wasn't until someone said to me, "You know, that's not true, right?" I was like, "Really? Oh,
Hey, it's the truth of the public, and so hey, it's
exactly.
true.
Yeah."
Just may not be on paper. You know, well, that's cool, and I have definitely enjoyed watching. You know, I like I love it when you do the up and when you get to do the ups and downs. And I try to remember which one it was, but I had to be. I'm pretty sure it was for Prodigy, and you were doing one, and you were a little bit more forgiving than our primary ups and down hosts on some of the discussions. And that was so funny. You're like, well, Sean might do this, but I'm gonna give it an up and all that. It was so cool.
Yeah. I mean, those were my first ups and downs for Trek culture. I've
Mm-hmm.
done them for Who, but obviously there's not as much Doctor Who as there is Star Trek being released, especially at the moment. But there's just a lot more Star Trek coming out than there is Doctor Who, and so my first Who culture ups and downs, I think, was Legend of the Sea Devils. I think that was my very first ups and downs ever. And I got asked like a few days before, Sean wasn't available, can you do it? And I'm like, sure. What am I doing? Okay. And then we had loads of time between all these episodes, so I didn't really have a lot of practice. It wasn't until season one where they were weekly that I actually really got into the swing of doing them, because I was just doing one every few months and then they just get left. Um, and then obviously with Prodigy being released all in one go, it was like, well, this is too much for Sean to do himself. And also, I am such a big fan of Prodigy that it would have been silly to not allow me to join in with that.
Oh yeah. Well, and I liked how y'all did that. That made sense to break it up because they did. They just boom dropped all of them at one time, and that's true. There's no way he could have done that by himself at all. He'd still be making ups and downs today to
I
do
mean, yeah,
that.
he could have done it, but it would have taken a lot longer for those videos to be
Yeah.
released.
Well, that's I didn't think about asking him this. When you're doing those and preparing for those, how long does it usually take to make an ups and down?
So for Who culture, it probably would take, for me, from notes to being recorded, it's a good few hours, and then it will go to the editor, and it could take him up to. I mean, it depends on the episode and how much there is to talk about, but generally, it's another. It's usually up by the next day, but he'll be working all through the night to get it done. But I actually didn't. So Chris does the Trek culture ones, and then Danny does the Who culture ones. But it was very interesting going from doing the Who culture ones to the Trek culture ones, because the process is actually quite different across the channels. I think just because we have different channel managers, we have different editors, so they have different ideas of how they want the process to go. So I was used to kind of following the process of how we do them for Who culture, which is very much kind of myself and Danny communicating with each other the whole time. It's very much a joint effort in terms of the notes and what's an up and what's down. Very much a joint effort. When it comes to the Trek culture ones, it's very much kind of like we're not entirely left to our own devices, but it's very much kind of this is up to you. So when I went over to the Trek ones and was just kind of left to my devices and just go for it, I was kind of like, wait, no one's going to help me. No one's going to sit down with me and go through this with me. I've just got to do it myself. That was quite daunting, especially doing the chunks of episodes in one go. Yeah, but I was very proud of myself once I'd finished doing those, because it was, I mean, that they took a lot longer. They took a long time. I did have to ask Sean for some help with the Easter eggs and things, just because I knew
Oh
I'd
yeah.
missed some.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, and I
yeah,
do love them. I love them when I get to watch them. You know, because sometimes they do get. Oh, that's a long one. When I see how long it is, I'm like, oh, he's got y'all have a lot to say about that episode, and I always laugh because when I watch, I'm like, I would say probably 95% of the time, I agree with like which way everything went. And then there's those times, as you know, as a fan, I'm like, okay, that's maybe just a little bit too nitpicky, but yeah, what the heck? It's all good. It's all in fun. And that's what I love about it. And what I do like is when I hear it and I'm like, oh, that makes, because I love how y'all explain stuff too. because I'm like, oh, I didn't, it just made me think. I didn't think about that. And it's a good way of explaining stuff. So I really appreciate y'all doing that and the channel doing that for all of us out here in the world to see and just enjoy more Trek together.
I think the thing is as well is it's our opinion, and so the difference between, so when myself and Sean did the Prodigy ups and downs, I might focus on something that Sean might have just briefly touched upon and moved on because it's something I'm really interested in that he might not be. I know we did have a few comments where people didn't like my version because I focused too much on, say, the pairing of Janeway and Chakotay or other elements of the story, and they were like, "Why? This is just her thoughts on it," and I'm kind of like, That's the point.
Yeah, that's the whole
I'm not
point.
here to just parrot what Sean would say. This is my
No.
This is what my thoughts are on the episode. And then we have
Yeah.
our podcast as well, where we then have myself and Sean and Tom. Sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not. But then we're there as a group to have a discussion, so we can voice different opinions, and the ups and downs are that one person's thoughts. But then we have discussions where we can have each individual thought and opinion on the episode and debate it.
That's a learning knowledge here too. As I progress in my channel, I mean, I don't think I'll be doing ups and downs, but I definitely want to do reactions. Either first reactions or a little bit later on discussions, like on as probably more when Strange New Worlds comes out sometime in 2025. So usually when I come to this next part that I'm about to ask, I am not 100% sure of what is the host most memorable interview. But with you, but when it comes to Star Trek, I feel pretty confident when I click play that this is number one. And so here we go.
I think one of the things that really draws me to the character is, she's a strong woman in a position of power and command, but you still see those vulnerabilities. She's
oh dear. Yeah, you would be correct in assuming that is the best interview I've done. That was like the best day of 2024. It was like the best day of my life. And my favorite part is if you just watch Sean in that interview, he just basically sat there and listened to me talk to Kate for the whole 15 minutes.
Yeah, he was just okay.
Yeah. I mean, we
I'll
had
say
15
something
minutes,
now.
and I think nine of those minutes were me talking with Kate and Sean just waiting his turn.
The amount of homework that you need to do to get ready, you do learn so many things. And I'm trying, and I'm doing I'm doing YouTube host. I want to go through and watch to see what I can find. And yeah, easy. This was the easiest one so far. Because I just laugh because I look at all your social media, Janeway, Chakotay, Janeway. So little JC here and there. It's just, but that's great because back in October I got to go to my first convention, and they had at SpaceCon, and they had almost every Voyager actor was there. The only ones that were missing was Roxanne Dawson, Robert Picardo, and Ethan Phillips. So I was able to get all of their autographs that day, including Kate Mulgrew's. Excuse me. And that was just so much fun because that convention was, I think it was the week before the Voyager documentary premiere. So they were kind of, it wasn't an official, rolling out and press type stuff, but still, that's kind of why I think they were able to get them all there, because they were getting ready for the premieres in, LA, New York, and London. Mm-hmm. And you went to the London one, right?
I did go to the London one, yes.
So I thought.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
It was very, very good. Yeah. It was, I mean, I'm very excited for people to see it. This is the trouble. It's so expensive. And most of the conventions are in America, so it's quite difficult to be able to go to them. I mean, that weekend when you had all of those Voyager actors in a panel, I mean, I was so jealous at home waiting. Someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone who was there posted the entire panel. And I was so grateful for them.
You may have seen one of the videos that was posted, because that was the same that Jerry Taylor passed away that day. that weekend, they actually brought Tom and Garrett up during the command crew panel to just all talk about it and everything. And oh my God, I have learned Garrett is the funniest guy. He is so funny, and he has such great stories to tell. We got to sit there, me, a couple of the employees of the convention crew, and just sit there and talk to him for about an hour, give or take. And it made me think about, and just thinking about this, I was so shocked when one of the stories he told us about Voyager, and I don't know why I should have known that something would happen, but I just didn't expect when he was telling us about the range of phone calls that Paramount got the day Voyager premiered, from the how much everybody loved it to it's the worst thing ever, to the fact they at one point needed to have security beefed up at the lot because people were threatening to attack them for putting a woman in the captain's chair.
It's ridiculous.
I was like, what? First, it's a show. I mean, beside the whole Star Trek, people like, it's just a show, people.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was interesting talking to him, and just learning that stuff. So, but now, like you did say, you don't have a lot of conventions, unfortunately, over in the UK. But what ones have you attended? So,
that we do have some that are in London, so I've attended like London Film and Comic Con a couple of times. To be honest, not until really starting this job is it something that I had done much. I'd been to one years ago. I think it was MCM in London. But the biggest one I've been to was last year when I flew over to Vegas and I did Star Trek Las Vegas, which was brilliant.
I wonder, did you have fun there too?
I did have fun there. Are you gonna? Have you got more things to embarrass me?
No, I wouldn't call it embarrassing. But how about that?
Oh, that's on my wall. It's behind me here on the shelf in Pride of Place.
Oh
Right
my
here.
goodness.
Right there.
Oh yeah. Oh, there it is. I see
There
it.
it is. Yes, that was a brilliant day. I think the thing is as well about Vegas in particular, and also because we're very fortunate from working at Trek Culture, we get to talk to a lot of wonderful people within the Star Trek world. Some of the greatest people I think I've met from the Star Trek world, who I would consider them my friends at this point, are the Hageman brothers. And the Prodigy creatives in particular are just so lovely. They're just such lovely people. So it was really lovely to spend some time with them in Vegas. Kevin wasn't there, but Dan Hageman was there. Aaron Waltke was there. And we did spend a lot of time just chatting with them and just spending time with them. But yes, I did have my photo op with Kate, which was brilliant. It was great. I mean, it was a long queue to stand in. And at one point, my mum came with me to Vegas. She's been a Star Trek fan for a very long time as well. And so we both went out there. But she wasn't having the photo op. And at one point, they made her leave the line. And I just had to stand there by myself. And I was like, I'm about to meet Kate Mulgrew and I'm all by myself.
That's oh my gosh, that's funny. You're just like, I'm so nervous. But I actually did get a selfie with her as well. She's my first selfie I ever got. So
the thing is as well at conventions is it's so fast paced. So I mean, you don't really have time to be nervous because they kind of just push you in, take the photo. But what was quite funny is obviously we'd done our interview with her earlier that week. So there was a little bit of chat that we could have. And she was talking to me and we kind of went, oh, we need to take this photo. So then we turned to take the photo and the staff were like dragging me out the way and Kate was still talking to me. And I was like, Kate is talking. Stop. Don't drag me away. Kate's talking to me. Like if I was talking, fair enough. Like, you've had your time now, move along. But if the Kate Mulgrew is talking, don't you dare interrupt.
Absolutely not. And that's the one thing. So I went to, like I said, I went to Creations Trek to Dallas, which those are the smaller regional ones, and so they're not STLV in any way, shape, or form. So they're a lot more personal, and so you don't have that go 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 mentality as much. And so I remember I was standing there waiting to get John Delancey's autograph, and he was telling it was just one lady in front of me, and he was just telling us his story about, when he was in elementary school and everything. And like that was like 15 minutes. We just got a little chit chat with him. I was like, oh, and those are the things that as a fan, I'm gonna remember way more than, those are the memories that are just you'll never forget them. You'll cherish those the most.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I mean about like the Hagemans, for example, like Dan Hageman, Aaron Waltke. I mean, there were evenings where we were just in the bar and they would just join us, and we were just it literally was just friends hanging out, as opposed to, you're not standing at a table conscious of the fact that you're holding up a line, or nervous about what you're going to talk about, because it was literally just, it was so laid back, so chilled, and that was the case for a lot of people that had the tables in the vendors room. There are certain people that are like a higher status who they're like, you have to come at this time when you're called, and people like Kate Mulgrew were obviously in that category, so you couldn't just wander over and have a chat. But there were plenty of people. I mean, Garrett Wong, for example, he was just wandering around all weekend. Elias Tufexis is another lovely, lovely gentleman. In fact, he was a fan of Trek culture before he was in Star Trek, and we've spoken to him on the channel before. He's so lovely. And Sean and I were standing in the vendors room talking to some followers of Trek culture. And all of a sudden, I just feel these arms behind me, and I turn around, and Elias has come over to me and Sean to say hi to us. And I'm like, this is my pal, Elias. He's just, this is my life now.
Oh, that's so awesome. Wow, that makes me think of Doug Jones. Oh my God. He is the sweetest kind. Oh, he is just he is a wonderful human. I mean, and you're going to get a hug regardless if you buy a photo or not, or anything. There were people, he'll just, like you said, you stop and say hi to him, he'll give you a hug when you're done talking. Oh, he was just so great to talk to. When we came into our meet and greet in my meet and greet portion, oh, it was so great. And then on my Friday, on the first day of the convention, our last person to come, last actor to come and talk to us was Sirach Lofton. And since he was the last one and wasn't being, drug off to go to another panel or another photo shoot, he got to sit there and we all just talked with him for about 45 minutes. His 10 minutes was up, but he's like, I don't have anywhere else to go right now. And so he just sat there and talked to us. And even then, I still learned more stuff about him. My goal and prayer and hope is that I'm able to get him to sit in a chair one of these days and do this with him. So, Rock, if you ever see this, I'm going to be asking you, buddy.
Look, if I've learned anything in this job, and from Sean in particular, is if you don't ask, you'll never know. And what's the worst that can happen is someone will say no. But the only way that we have got to the place that we're at is by asking, contacting people, reaching out, especially to those who we're closer to start with. Word of mouth spreads, and we're now at a point where we can interview the likes of Kate Mulgrew. So
yes. Oh, I know. And yeah, it'll get there. I'll get there. That's my goal. I'm going to get there. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to, something I wanted to ask, because again, it falls back into our opening of Doctor Who and Star Trek. And I have realized a lot of people tend to be Star Trek fans and Doctor Who, or vice versa. And I do remember there was a lot of internet chatter about how much season 2 of Prodigy felt like Wesley's character was the Doctor. And, and just how cool would it be to actually get a true crossover, even if it's just an animation? Just, how awesome would it be to get to, he can travel time and dimension, so he could easily come into the Star Trek world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, people have asked me this question a lot about how I would like to see them cross over. I think it would be quite good. and more realistic to actually happen if, rather than crossing over the main characters, having the Doctor appear on the bridge of the Enterprise or Captain Kirk arrive in the TARDIS, which is less likely to actually happen. But I feel like you could definitely make it so that the universe exists within each other. So have the Enterprise arrive on a planet that's full of, I don't know, the Silence, or meet the Daleks, and have it so that the kind of the planets and the species are what connect the two shows, as opposed to the main characters, because that's where it kind of could get cheesy. Whereas if you say have the Doctor arrive to meet the Vulcans, or you have the Enterprise go to Ratsacoricophalopatorius, or do you know what I mean? It's just, I think that would be more realistic and have the crossover of species and planets as opposed to the main characters.
I can see that as well. And even if you did just have a quick little cameo or something every, maybe even just if you're going to start the crossovers off, you have the Doctor pop in, like you say, onto the Enterprise or the Cerritos or, the stuff.
You know how in one of the Star Wars films they have the ET aliens, and then it's kind of like these so these universes exist within each other. So it's simple as, go to a some sort of alien bar in Star Trek, but there's some Doctor Who monsters in that bar, and you start to build it that way. I think that would be a more realistic way to do it. If we actually want it to happen, that's the way to do it.
That's good. No, it is. And because you were saying, because also, hello, in First Contact, you blink and you miss it. The Millennium Falcon is in the Borg attack scene. So even Star Wars is in there in some way. But,
it's doable. It's doable.
Oh, I think it's doable.
Make it happen.
Make it happen. So that's why we need Prodigy Season 3.
Yes, we do need Prodigy
more Lower
Season
Decks.
3. Do you know what? Lower Decks is one that I haven't watched as much of at this point in my Star Trek journey. I am now at a point where I've seen more than I haven't. But when I first started with Trek Culture, I was familiar with it. I'd seen lots of The Next Generation because that's what my mum loved it. So growing up, we used to watch episodes of it. So I knew who those characters were, but I didn't know specifically like episodes or whatever. It wasn't until they said, okay, you can work full time, but you've got to work on Trek Culture too. And then the conditions were you need to watch Star Trek. So that's what I did. And it was kind of like a test period where it was kind of like, this could work, this couldn't. It's all very well that you can act as if you know what you're talking about, but there's a big difference between putting your acting skills to good use and pretending that you know what you're talking about in the script, and actually having your own opinions about it, and people don't want to just see someone talking about it when they clearly don't know anything about it. So luckily I started watching it and I got very, very hooked. But I think Voyager is when I got really hooked. When I got to Voyager.
No. Really? Voyager? That's what got you hooked? I wouldn't believe that. I wouldn't.
I was hooked on The Next Generation, to be fair, because I was familiar with it. But I was kind of already gripped because I already knew it. I was kind of like, yeah, I've seen these ones, but Voyager was the first. I went straight from The Next Generation to Voyager. I'm doing Deep Space Nine now, but Voyager was the first one I'd seen that I had no prior knowledge of. I hadn't seen previously. I didn't go into it going, well, I know that that's Worf and that's Data and I know roughly what's going on. That was the first one where I was like going in blind, and it gripped me straight away.
Oh yeah. Well, and you've kind of touched on it already as to what first drew you into Star Trek, and just watching with your mom, it sounds like.
Yeah, so my mom was a big Next Generation fan. She went to some conventions, I think when it was first on and like before I was born, but she would go to Next Generation. Well, I think she maybe went to one. I maybe exaggerate this every time I tell this story, but she did. She liked it enough to have, like, we had the Enterprise. We've got a Klingon bird of prey model in the loft somewhere. And she had, a uniform, and so she had lots of things. So she was really, really into it. So we did watch it, but I wasn't really into it at that point. I think my brother was. My brother was quite into it. And the same with Doctor Who, actually, to start with. I watched it as a kid and we did watch it every week. But I think my brother was the one who was into it more than I was. It wasn't until I got a bit older that I really started getting into Doctor Who more. And then obviously getting the job kind of refreshed my knowledge of, or my knowing about Star Trek, and then I actually got into it myself, to the point where I actually surpassed my mum in terms of being a Star Trek nerd at this point.
Yeah. Well, and I can add something to that, as you know, I start with TNG as well. I was 11 when it came out. But now that now that I do the podcast with the Seventh Rule, and we're reviewing TNG and all that, and even TOS, you don't pick up the subtleties when you're that young. And now I watch these episodes, and sometimes when I'm preparing, I'll watch it 2 or 3 times, because sometimes I be honest, I have a hard time figuring out what, the underlying message is on them. And probably one of the hardest ones so far that we watched was The Host, where it's the first time we're introduced to the Trill. And I think it was my 3rd watch, trying to get ready, make my notes to get ready for our recording that afternoon. I was watching it, and I was like, and it was just like this light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, that's what they're trying to say there at the end. But it's when O'Dawn comes back out as a female, because I don't know if you remember that episode, him and Dr. Crusher, were in a relationship and so on and so on. Well, comes back out as a female host, and basically she makes a comment, she has a statement that she's talking about, and it made me realize she was talking about same-sex marriages or relationships. And I think that was 91, that still was not, that was very taboo, especially on TV. Censors were not going to allow that. But yeah, and then when we talked about it, everybody was like, yes, that's kind of what they were hinting at. And so, yeah, so it's kind of like you say, is this, we go from, the meat of the nerdiness of it to now the cultural aspects of what they were really trying to, get out there. Now, Code of Honor, well, that one could probably go away. Yeah, well, and that goes with we're watching the original series as well, and I like it. The episodes are good. It's just the problem is, and you just have to put myself in the time for a mindset that this was the 60s, the late 60s, and that's just the way things went. And so but the message is there.
I think something that's very interesting in regards to the original series, and I would recommend anyone who hasn't to get their hands on Nana Visitor's book, Open a Channel, A Woman's Trek. And there's a lot I learned a lot about, especially the original series, in that book, in terms of what the actors went through, specifically the female actors went through, but certain things that you might watch now and make a judgment on, but at the time was actually an entirely different thing. For example, like the really short skirts that they would wear, kind of the mini dresses. And I always kind of, you look at that now and go, oh, look at what the men made them wear. But actually at the time, it was kind of used as a superpower. They wore it in kind of rebellion, and they saw it as a strength to wear those things. And, I'd never looked at it like that before, because I'm looking at it from the mindset of a young woman in 2025. But reading the book and seeing the kind of viewpoints of those actors and how they felt at the time, I mean, obviously there were a lot of awful things that happened as well, but actually there were some things where I was like, I've never looked at it like that before. Very interesting.
Oh, it's very interesting. I mean, the way you just said that, it made me remember, I remember my mother telling me a story when she was in, high school and elementary school, girls, you could not wear that. It was, full length, maybe not full length, but knee high dresses, and no jeans at all at school. So now that you say that, now it makes more sense why they were doing that. And
yeah, so it wasn't necessarily to belittle the women or sexualize them necessarily, but actually to show their strength, and the fact that they are breaking these boundaries.
Well, and that's the thing, they did break a lot of boundaries. I mean, the kiss between Kirk and Uhura, I mean, that was huge. And then on Monday, last Monday, was MLK Day, and and I know obviously I'm pretty sure you remember the story about Nichelle Nichols was ready to leave the show, and I pulled up when I was talking with someone about that, and just he's like, you can't leave the show because you are giving girls of yeah, he's like, you cannot leave the show, you're giving us representations, what he said. And that hit her, so she's like, okay, I'll stay. So now we know what drew you into Star Trek. I can almost skip this one because I always ask this. It's what's your favorite Star Trek series?
Oh, well, that's got to be Voyager, hasn't it?
Yeah, like I should
But
just.
it is closely followed by Prodigy.
True. I guess. Yeah, this is one of the. That was the easy one for you today. Is what's your favorite Star Trek series? And we got that. No questions. That. Oh hell. The next one I'll use is easy too. Who's your favorite character and what do they represent to you?
Well,
I don't know who it is.
Obviously, Janeway is my favorite character. But I think a lot of people think, oh, you just like her because, she's a woman or whatever. And there's so much more to it. I was trying to talk about this the other day, the last time I was on the podcast for Trek Culture. There's just, my favorite characters in most TV shows tend to fit into the same category. And it's generally female characters, but usually kind of like the middle-aged female characters. I think a lot of people assume that young female viewers will relate to the young female characters, and I've always been more drawn to the kind of the older female characters. But I'm also usually drawn to the ones who are perhaps perceived to be a little bit cold, maybe a little bit standoffish, who have these vulnerabilities, but they kind of hide them. And I think they're the characters that are the most interesting, because you have moments where those walls come down and those barriers come down, and you start to see those vulnerabilities to them. And Janeway is a character who is constantly burdened with this battle between being the captain and being in charge and being so strong all the time, but also being a woman, and how that is different to being a male captain, because of the pressures that are put on her, because of the expectations that are put on her. But also she's in a completely unprecedented situation, which would be hard for a male captain as well as a female captain. But because she is a woman, there are expectations that are on her that wouldn't necessarily be on a male captain. And the idea of her having companionship is something that was never entertained, because the response to that would have been so different to that of a male captain. And I know that Kate Mulgrew has spoken about this so much because of how her thoughts and feelings towards how the character should have been presented, and not wanting that to be how her captain was seen, and knowing that that would be the only way a relationship for the captain would be viewed. Now, I think if it was made today, it would be very different, and we'd see much more exploration of how that affected her. That's something that I would love. That's something I feel was missed just because of when it was made, the way it was made. It was very episodic, and so there are a lot of storylines that I feel like now would be explored over a longer period of time, and you could really see the effects of things. I mean, Resolutions is one of my favorite episodes. Because I'm a JC shipper. But I feel as though, even if, I completely understand why they didn't end up as a couple, and I completely respect Kate Mulgrew's decisions on that and why it wouldn't have worked for the dynamic of this particular captain. But I do feel like it was a real missed opportunity because of the episodic structure, for it not to have been explored over the next few episodes, how they struggled to go back to that command relationship after having that much more laid back potential romance. And it wasn't explored how they readjusted once they got back. It was kind of, they were back, that was it, and the next episode it was never mentioned again. And they're the areas of it that I feel like were missed opportunities to explore more of, particularly Janeway's vulnerabilities.
And it makes me wonder, and I think if they hadn't been in the episodic realm, and like you're saying, of today, they could have explored it, and maybe if they hadn't been in the Delta Quadrant either, if they had been in, if JC could have somehow transpired not where she wasn't hunting him, maybe they could have explored that more later on, or even now, honestly, even now with Prodigy, and they have been doing that, as best as they can. But you're right, with the situation itself just did not really allow it to progress more than they probably did, for the fact that they were stuck in the Delta Quadrant. And again, you know, you're stuck on that ship, and if you have a fight and you're like, well, you get out of my quarters, you're stuck in this little bottle that you can't get away from that person. So yeah, I mean, but I think, yeah, if it was today, they probably could have gone a little bit farther with it.
I think that all the reasons that have been given for why the captain shouldn't have been with Chakotay or anyone, um, off screen, behind the scenes, I think that all those reasons would have been really good to explore on screen. So I'm not necessarily, I mean, as much as I think they should be together, I'm not necessarily saying they should have made them a couple, but I think it would have been really interesting to see those moments behind closed doors of them struggling to accept that, to see Janeway want it, but not allow herself to have it. And we can kind of read into that based on what they've said in interviews, the actors and creatives have said, but I would have really liked to have seen that on screen, and explore those kind of quieter moments, those kind of reflective moments that you might see now, but in the 90s, the focus was more on the alien of the week, the action, the kind of the space elements, as opposed to the kind of character elements.
Yeah, they did the character. I don't want to say development per se, but yeah, the character, the building of that character's, internal life, and their relationships. I mean, we got Tom and Balana, and that was all that was it. That's kind of where they stuck. And we had Neelix and Kess at the very, very beginning,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a weird one. Yeah. So yeah, it's just how we have progressed.
But I think the thing is, as well, is, I've been saying about how I was quite new to Star Trek and things. One of the things that our channel manager Chris has been really happy for me to bring to the channel is that it's kind of proving the point that Star Trek is a timeless show, that I can start watching it at the age of, I mean, I can't remember how old I was, but maybe say 20, 25, 20, 24, 25, and having not really watched much of it, and watch something that was made in the 90s and still find such a connection to it. And what I've been bringing to the channel is this fresh perspective of Star Trek. Kind of people kind of live vicariously through me, watching it for the first time, and they can kind of feel like they're reliving it or experiencing it for the first time again. And just, yeah, proving that Star Trek is a timeless show that you can still watch now for the first time, even if you're young now, and you're not watching it for the nostalgic element of it, and you can still be really, really drawn to it and connected to it.
Well, and I like how we've added the animation to it now, and
Yes.
it's kicked in because now we can bring in even younger. Well, makes it sound like a cult, but we can bring in we can bring in younger generations though,
Yeah.
and with animation that would not understand the live action at the moment, but they at least can be introduced to the concepts and the ideas of Star Trek, and then see how, and then when they're done with that, then they grow to the actual series, the live action series, and they've had a really good introduction to it.
I think the best thing about Prodigy is that although it is aimed at a younger audience, it's not dulled down. They don't treat kids like they're stupid. If you just say it how it is, obviously to a degree you have to simplify it, which sometimes can be helpful. I mean, there are elements of Star Trek in terms of the science fictiony stuff that even I don't understand. And so I'm quite grateful when Prodigy has a character like Dal who says, "Sorry, can you just explain that in terms that I understand?" And it means that even members can go, "Yeah, explain that to me so I can understand it. And then when you say it again in a different series, I'll actually understand what it is you're talking about. But I'm not stupid. Just tell me it in words that I can understand, and then I've grasped the concept of something very complicated."
Yeah, and I Oh yeah, no, that's a great. He's a good character because he's not afraid to act. Well, he eventually gets to the asking part. He may try to fumble through, but by the end, he finally says, just like you said, tell me what the heck you're talking about. And it's like, oh, now I understand what you're saying. And so, but you're right. They do not, absolutely do not dumb it down for, to a horrible level. It is a very ingestible level. And it's Star Trek that you can watch with your family and children. So yeah, it, I know a lot of people don't like any of the there's a group out there do not feel the animated Star Treks are Star Trek, but they are. I'm sorry, they are.
I mean, you can't watch season 2 of Prodigy and say it's not part of Star Trek. It's literally woven into the fabric of Star Trek.
Yeah, I'm gonna say one more thing about Prodigy season 2, and then we'll probably have to move on. But oh my god, when they brought Jack and Wes and Dr. Crusher together, oh god, that was so great because it honestly made Picard season 3 feel for me. It kind of closed that loop on that whole aspect because I'm like, does Wes not even know he has a brother? And oh my god, yeah, I really do think I actually might have teared up a smidge when she introduced, here's your brother Jack. Oh, Now I don't know if he knows who the daddy is, who the father is at this point, but that's their business. But still, oh my god, I just could not believe they did that, and it was so great. It just, I loved it. I loved it. So this is going to be one of my last questions, and it's just a fun question. What Star Trek technology do you wish existed today?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, the obvious answer is the transporter, so you don't have to ever get on a plane again. You could just be places. Or the food replicator, so you never have to cook again, because I hate cooking. Or hypersprays, because I am the worst when it comes to injections. So basically anything that means the things I hate I don't have to do anymore.
I want transporters so bad because I want to go to STLV this year, but I'm not going to be able to get away due to work obligations. It's this August is the busy time, my busy time, and so if I told everybody, hey, I'm gonna be gone for the first week of August, y'all handle all the setup for everything. Bye. I might come back to a staff that wants to, beat me with my Klingon pain sticks or
Yeah.
worse, And so, yeah, transporters would be for me would be awesome. And like you said, replicators. And the first time someone told me replicators, I didn't really put two and two together at first. But when they said why, I was like, oh, replicators ends world hunger almost overnight.
Yep.
And
Replicators just make anything you need.
yes. And then when we were talking, the gentleman and I were talking, I was like, oh my God, the perfect episode. Caretaker.
I mean, why do you think that? Yeah, why do you think the Kazon wanted it so much?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, replicators, transporters, obviously warp drive. Because yes, I'd like to see the aliens before they come here, meet them. It's yeah.
But yeah, a hyperspray. I could do that. I'm not very good when it comes to having to have injections and anything medical, but if you can just pop a little thing on my neck that doesn't even hurt, that's fine.
Done.
Yeah.
Just
If I
take
don't
the blood
feel
out.
it, it's fine. Yeah. Do what you want. I just don't want to be feeling no needles because I'm not about that life.
Same. I had to have a needle a couple of days ago. I'm like, where's the?
Yeah. See, hyper sprays.
Done.
That's what we need.
That's what we need.
Someone make it.
They're trying. They try that. They're trying hard. Oh well. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for giving me your time today on the weekend, and just just being here and just chatting. This has been a lovely experience. I just thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed chatting about all my favorite things.
Me too. So, well, I will talk to you later. You enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
For as little as $5 per month, you can gain early access to the full ad-free versions of all interviews, plus additional exclusive content by joining Patreon.